Well, just hung up on another great chat with my friend Stephen Thomas. And I wanted to get more of his personal story because it's brilliant. He's so brilliant. Every time I get on a call with him with our GB carnivores or whatever, or other times that we've chatted online or met, he just blows me away with his knowledge of biochemistry and, his knowledge of phlebotomy and what is wrong with blood tests and things. Have a listen to that. We do get into that a bit this time. But if you want to hear really loads more about this, please come along to our War on Health conference if you're listening to this before Easter 2024. It's at Easter. The link will be below to sign up and come along and see us because it's the second one we've done. And the first one was so good, we thought we'd do it twice as long, twice as good. So come along and hang out with Stephen and the other speakers. Now, if you go to that page, bigfatchallenge.com/events, thebigfatchallenge.com/events. On that page, there's all the details about the event, but also we have I've got all the interviews now from all the other speakers as well on there. So now I've got a full house with Stephen, and if you have a look there, we've got Zofia Clements and we've got, who else have we got? Yeah, we've got Ben as well. Ben Hunt, who was on my podcast earlier, my good friend Ben Hunt, who I'm organising this event with. And there's Sarah Pugh, and there's Dr. Ahmad Malik, and there's Andrew Scarborough with his incredible story about brain cancer reversal. And everybody's on there. So go along to thebigfatchallenge.com/events and get booked up for Easter. There's an early bird that 50 quid off till the end of Feb. Just trying to remember there. Early bird, all in caps. Anyway, I'll put the details below and all of Stephen's details below as well. But enjoy this chat because Stephen's great. He's had an interesting life and he's got some amazing knowledge. So enjoy.
Son of a lighthouse keeper, through cons and a wishing well, prayed for a love to call his own, a love to break the spell.
All right, welcome back everybody to the Red Pill Buddhas podcast. And it's been ages that I've been thinking I need to get Stephen on. This is Coach Stephen Thomas, and every time that we do a little online call together for the GB carnivores or whatever, every time I tune into his channel, which you've got to go and check out if you haven't, he blows me away with his knowledge. But not only that, but I'd really like, these Red Pill Buddhas podcasts to get more into the sort of personal side of people, get their characters out. And I'd love to hear more of the story. I've seen it. I mean, phlebotomist, bodybuilder, marathon runner, stuntman. I want to hear about all this stuff. Stephen, welcome. Thank you so much for coming on.
Oh, that's okay, Phil. Thanks for inviting me. I mean, it has been a long time coming, but yeah, I think sometimes when people are really close and you're doing things, you slip under the radar, so to speak, and you've only just met Richard. Oh, I'll get Richard on, and then you got Richard on. It's like, well, okay, I've only known you like 5 years or something.
No, it's because it's funny, isn't it? Yeah, you're absolutely right there. They were closer because I knew a lot more about your story. And I didn't know so much about Richard. So I thought, right, let's bring Richard on and hear about his story. It's entirely selfish. But yeah, so if anybody hasn't heard that, listen to that last one as well. And if you're listening to it before Easter 2024, book onto the War on Health because Stephen's talking, Richard's talking, and if you go to I'll put a link underneath. I don't want to waste time on that, but it's a podcast of all the speakers there. Now we've got the full house with Stephen. Brilliant. Yeah, you sometimes overlook your mates, don't you? Staff. So my apologies. But anyway, listen, Stephen, where did your journey start in this? Because you came from a sort of a bit of a sort of normie and unwell background on in diet and lifestyle and whatever. And how did it progress? Because you've got an amazing story there.
Well, yeah, thanks for saying it's an amazing story. It doesn't feel amazing. It just feels organic because, I'm coming to my 60th year this year, and, day by day, things have progressed and got better. So I suppose I should start at the beginning, which was that I was pretty healthy and fit and athletic and sporty, even at school. So I had the 800-meter school record. And this will all make sense when you get to sort of my 40s, by the way. It's not me being a big I am. And then in my 20s, I did a bodybuilding tournament. I'd been semi-professional soccer player. I say soccer because I'm so used to speaking to Americans, but it's football, the proper word football, where people use their feet to kick a ball. I mean, that's football. I don't pick it up and run with it. So that was good. I won a singles tournament in tennis. Right. So there's me being a big show off. And I was doing the food guidelines. I was following everything. Absolutely. Didn't smoke, didn't drink. Blueberries on my oatmeal. See, another Americanism there. On my porridge. Skim milk, freshly squeezed orange juice, all of that stuff. No red meat, no fats. I had granary bread because it was, whole grains, really healthy. Now, I had lost my parents by the age of 23, and my mum was into bran and all the stuff I just mentioned. She got colon cancer. So for the vegans out there that think red meat gives you colon cancer, she didn't have any, and she didn't have saturated fat. And I think you need to shut up about that and learn some facts. And sorry if that sounds a bit nasty, but it's getting on my nerves because I've lived it. I lost both my parents to cancer and a girlfriend to cancer. So we were following the guidelines. So I was following the guidelines, but it wasn't a light bulb moment. And that's one of the saddest things about it all, really. So I continued on this way, not smoking, not drinking, doing everything perfect. So yes, you're right. I did some interesting things. Something I maybe haven't told you. I did stand up on TV, on national TV a bit, talking about my deafness, which is, the positive side of deafness. At the time, my favorite joke was, I can watch Girls Aloud. But anyway, but I don't have to listen.
That's a new mission. I appreciate that.
Yeah. And, I talk about the fact that when I had my hearing tests, they'd call out your name and all this sort of stuff, which is absolutely ridiculous because there was, 9 or 10 deaf people in the waiting room all going, what, me? What's the name you're calling? Which, so there is some ludicrous stuff and I could see the funny side. And yes, I am deaf and I wear hearing aids and I lip read and I have special stuff to be able to do this. But I didn't let that get me down. And yeah, I ended up doing stunts for movies, body doubles. I was Paddy Considine's look-alike in the Bourne Ultimatum. And there's bits in the film where because it's me, you could tell it's me, but we got away with it. So yeah, quite a checkered past, all good fun. Did some great stuff as well, which are a bit more worthy. I helped children sort of at the Last Chance Saloon. I worked at a place where they were going to be expelled, but we tried to change their life around with really sort of holistic teaching. I've got an English literature degree and honours degree in literature. So that's a part of my past maybe, Phil, you don't know. I've got 2 degrees, one more, and I can sing When Will I See You Again? But anyway, I've now got a science degree, honours in physiology and health sciences. So fast forward to 40. And I am middle distance running. I'm being coached by a guy that's actually won marathons. The standard is incredibly high. We're doing every Saturday a mile sprint, stuff like that. So, really kicking on and being pretty healthy. So I tell you all that because my health was atrocious. By the time I was 40, I had lower left quadrant pain, colonoscopy, investigations, sitting in the room where you get your bad news, along with a load of other patients, seeing other people get bad news. Yes, you've got colon cancer and all this. And because of my family history, which, by the way, the genetics, I don't believe anywhere near as much as I used to. I sat there and thought, yeah, I'm going to die. I mean, it's as simple as that. This is my card. It's been marked. I'm not even get to 50. And even though I was running 10 miles 3 times a week, and obviously by the end of the week being 30 miles away from my house, and eating all the right things, being the poster boy for the food guidelines, not smoking, not drinking. I had lower left quadrant pain, a coronary artery calcium score of 639, and I was getting fatter, you know, and I wasn't doing any of the things that I now do. And I was atrocious, pre-diabetic, cataracts, had a great big mark on my skin, which looked like somebody had got a strawberry and pushed against me. I mean, really bad. It was atrocious, and low level stuff like athlete's foot I'd had since I was 18, and I'd tried everything to get rid of it. And it's strange, those little niggly things, you know, when they go, you don't take any notice of it. It's only doing this job that I do notice those things. There are loads and loads of things that were going wrong with me, absolutely loads. And my hearing was getting worse. It was pretty severely bad, even when I was 23. And I've used the same audiologist for maybe 2 decades, same machine. And that's important in a second. So anyway, come to 50, I had been studying obesity and diabetes because I am a qualified phlebotomist, and I was an advanced personal trainer in my 40s. I trained somebody in the Olympics who ended up javelin throwing, and she was a type 1 diabetic. So I ended up becoming a specialist practitioner in obesity and diabetes. And it was then I had a light bulb moment, and I didn't act on it straight away. But we kept talking about medications and dosing in relation to carbohydrates. And I was the joker who didn't come from a medical background, but from a sporting background, who had an open mind and just put my hand up and said, well, why don't we just reduce the carbohydrates? All we seem to talk about is increasing meds in relation to carbohydrates. Let's just reduce them. And it was like I'd grown 3 heads. It was ridiculous. I can remember even talking about fasting and people saying, well, don't be stupid, you've got to eat 3-4 times a day. I mean, absolutely ridiculous when I look back. I wish I had more gumption and a bit more confidence about this way of eating then, because I would have taken them to task over it, but I didn't. I just rolled over, played dead. So for those people that are a bit critical of the medical health profession, it's pretty tough to put your head above the parapet. It really is. The peer pressure is enormous, and you've got to be a very confident person to go against the tide. And I'll be absolutely unabashed to say I wasn't that person. I am now, because it's important. I'm coming up to my 60th year, and I think as you get older, you do think, oh, stuff them, I'm going to say what I really think, especially when you've got all the evidence on your side. And, you know, again, not blowing my own trumpet, I'm sure you're about the same field, but, you know, I've had over 1,000 people get better. Over 1,000, all right? And I'm a small fish. So imagine, you know, if you times that by everyone, that's a small fish. That's millions of people. So come 50, I thought something's got to change. So I knew I was pre-diabetic because I was doing the phlebotomy. I mean, I was trained up to sort of the NHS level, but I was offering private blood tests. And the weird thing is, as I was getting more and more diabetic customers come to me, or clients, patients, whatever you want to say, they were improving, and they were telling me about low carb, and they were saying, look, I found this out, I've seen this person, I'm doing this, I've read Zoe Harcombe's book or something. Well, you know, so I decided to give it a whirl and do the low carb. Didn't do carnivore, didn't do keto straight away, which is an interesting thing to talk about with transition. And it was amazing. The difference was amazing. So I got that first flush of losing the water weight, and wow, my body composition improving instantly, losing the muffin top pretty much instantly. You know, instantly as in, you know, not the next day, but sort of 3-4 weeks after a big struggle to get rid of it for months and months and months, and, you know, doing calorie restriction, which incidentally is micronutrient restriction, macronutrient restriction. All right. So you're restricting everything. Don't buy into that BS. I'm sorry. I'm not going to swear on here. You can swear, Phil. It's your
You're
channel.
very welcome. You swear as much as you like, because in these subjects, there sometimes needs to be a bit of sentence enhancement, doesn't there? Because there's so much bullshit. Yeah.
Yes.
Go on.
So, you know, so I tried low carb, and then I obviously watched a few influencers. Jason Fung comes to mind, Dr. Eric Berg, who gets a lot of stick, I understand, but he's like the gateway drug to other things, I think. You know, he's personable, he is knowledgeable, and I like him. I still like him. I still think some of the things he says is valid. Just don't agree with the 7 cups of veg, which, you know, but there you go. It's he's got 11 million followers. I've got 18,000. So who's right? Anyway, so he was good. And then Ken Berry was, a big influence. And I'm not saying there's anything, I don't know him. I messaged him a couple of times. I've had a couple of messages back. I don't know him, but it was like a parallel existence, because as he started to get off the, I can remember a video he did where he was telling me to eat my greens, and then I can remember him becoming carnivore. And I was literally sort of day by day feeling the same. It wasn't because of his videos. It was because the more I took carbs out, the better I felt. So I went ketogenic. And then when I got to 55 for a 30-day challenge, I thought, oh, well, I'll give carnivore a go, because yes, I'd never heard of Joe Rogan. I'd never heard of Sean Baker. And there I was watching Sean Baker on Joe Rogan's, and then joining MeatRx to become a carnivore coach and doing the training with Sean. And that 30 days has become nearly 5 years. So in May, when I'm 60, it will be 5 years. And absolutely everything's improved. So I'm not pre-diabetic. I can't believe I'm going to say this, but my hearing got better a little bit. And I'm not saying that it's anything magical, but it's enough for me to go, well, I've got empirical data. I've got somebody, I've got a medical professional saying, what are you doing? How did that happen? How did you get a little bit of your hearing back? And of course, once I said what I thought it was, they were like, well, it can't be that. But anyway, obviously the skin's cleared up, athlete's foot has gone. So lots of good things. I can go without food. I've got food freedom. I'm not constantly thinking about food, which I had up until I was like 50. My wife is saying, what a difference. I would always be like, what we're going to have tonight? What should we have at 11 in the morning? Constantly on my mind. I gained 9 pounds of muscle, which is interesting, because when I did my bodybuilding tournament, which was in my 20s, when I was, full of testosterone, it should have been much easier to gain muscle. But it was really hard then. I mean, I did well, and my training partner went on to do Mr. England. So I seem to be around all these successful people, but not me. Maybe I'm always the bridesmaid. But, I did okay, and I looked all right in the tournament. But then I got into, like I say, 55. I gained 9 pounds of muscle in about a year and a half using X3 and carnivore. That was it. I haven't retested on my coronary artery calcium scan yet, but only yesterday I interviewed someone that had on carnivore gone from a score of 260 down to 16. So these things really happen, by the way, really happen. So look out for that on my channel. I've got
how many useless anecdotes are there now? Like hundreds of thousands, outweighing all the studies, outnumbering all of those participants. It's crazy, but they're still useless anecdotes, aren't they? According to the vegan.
Yeah, and it gets me because there's the old joke about when I was studying, like plagiarism is copying one essay, research is copying 20. And it is an anecdote is data. When there's enough people, I don't care what other people say, a clinical trial can be completely abused and set up. And this is one of the things, maybe you'll like this about me, but I sort of decided to be part of a clinical study rather than actually talk about it in the third person. I applied to do it, to go in and, be put in a lab and have all things done to me. And I was picked, but I couldn't do it because the diet was absolutely atrocious. A few things might set some alarm bells ringing, because at this point I was able to have a bit of gumption and ask questions. So when they showed us the menu, I asked if I could take a picture of it, because I'm still an honest person and I'm not duplicitous, and they didn't want me to. And I said, well, why is that? The reason I wanted to take it was I wanted to go online and say, look at this. This is designed in a certain way. It certainly isn't carnivore, and it certainly isn't good for me. So they wouldn't let me do that. And then when the food frequency questionnaire came up, and the question about meat, there was no division between what sort of meat you eat. And I said, it's just literally a big button that said, do you eat meat? So like, yes. And I was expecting, right, you eat meat. What sort of meat do you eat? Is it on a pizza? Is it processed, or is it fresh? And there wasn't one. So I just said to the guy, and literally in the white coat with a clipboard, it really was, very like a sitcom. I said, there's no way of determining what sort of meat I eat. Oh no, that's all right. Well, if you eat meat, you eat meat. Like, right, but there's different types of meat. And it was like, yeah, it doesn't matter. Well, it does matter, because
Amazing.
it's incredible. So this is quite a highfalutin sort of study where I would have got paid thousands to be this guinea pig along with other people. So yeah, I've been in that situation firsthand, which is one of the things that makes me feel very confident. Partly why I did the phlebotomy is because I was fed up with being told stuff that I knew wasn't true. So I wanted to learn about it, and I wanted to interpret bloods, and in cahoots with a doctor, basically. Every single one of my private blood tests did have doctor's comments, but of course we would communicate about the things that were being said. And again, we're going back to the standard duty of care. There's certain things that maybe a doctor doesn't really believe but has to say. So it's just mind-boggling once you sort of scratch the surface, and it really is just scratching the surface. It isn't even going down a rabbit hole. It's abundantly clear that we're being told stuff because we're told that we have to tell people certain things, not because it's true. And it's absolutely ridiculous. So my own personal health journey has been one of coming to carnivore and getting fit, even though I did everything right. So most people sort of say, I mean, even you, Phil, will say, oh, I had tons of brandy, or I did this, I did that. I didn't have any of that. I should literally have been the poster boy for the food guidelines. I should be at 60 saying, it works. If you follow it, if you don't smoke, if you don't drink, if you eat less and you move more, and you avoid red meat and you avoid saturated fat, you're going to live for the rest of your life healthy and abundant and maybe into your hundreds. And by 50, I realized that that was a crock of crap, really was, because I had none of those things. And also I've seen it, like I say, with my mum in particular, that isn't true, just isn't true. So that's why I do what I do. I want to online coach. I want to spread the word, get people that have had these miraculous health improvements, regressing, coming off of medications. I just want to tell the world. And that isn't, I don't want to be a vegan. I don't want to walk in and go, guess what I am? I'm a carnivore. I don't want that, because that's awful, telling people straight away. I want people to come to me and tell me their story and then share that story. And like you say, useless anecdotes. So 150 video success stories, 1,000 reviews. They're all useless, but they're all real people, and they've all turned their life around. And, I just feel quite passionately about it, to be honest.
No, it's brilliant. And I know what you mean. People think that we've sort of, because I had the whole sort of vegetarianism and veganism thing. People go, oh, well, you've gone from one extreme to another and all of that sort of thing. But there's no militancy about it. I don't care what people eat. People should do exactly what they like. It's just this demonization of meat, isn't it? Like you say, people don't realize that meat in these studies includes a pepperoni pizza. And it's just, this is not, there's so many confounders, aren't there? I said to a vegan yesterday, it doesn't take much shit to make honey smell like shit, right? But what they're doing in their diet and these studies is getting a bucket of shit and adding a little bit of honey and mixing it up, and then getting the study to say that honey smells like shit. It's, this tiny bit of processed meat or whatever that people eat amongst all of their carbohydrates and all of their vegetable toxins and seed oils and smoking and drinking and whatever they do, and the meat gets the blame. What is it? Why can people not see that we've eaten it for millennia and whatever? But they've been onto that, haven't they? Oh no, we're actually fruitarians, and we're, so they're trying to come at it from all angles, and it's so cruel. And oh God, man, it's a tangle, isn't it? But this war on health and the war on meat in particular. Are we going to win this? Are we going to get through to these people eventually,
Well, yeah. I mean, I use the phrase scratching the surface, right? You say a fruitarian. Well, just think about it. It doesn't make any sense. Fruit doesn't grow anywhere 24/7. So you can't be a fruitarian. Simple as that. There's no B12. There's no protein. It's obviously stupid. And
they don't see it. Something happens with the brain.
Well, because they're not getting enough B12 and exactly. Enough amino acids, and they can't make neurotransmitters. I mean, it is saying, I've never heard that before, that we are naturally fruit vegetarians. I mean, I've heard of people doing that and then just withering away and their teeth falling out. But
Exactly.
that makes, I just want to do a quick aside. If people want to find my stand-up, they won't see it under my name because luckily I used an equity name and my act was abysmal, but I did get on national TV 3 times. But anyway,
I want to see that. I want to hunt that out. You'll have to send me a link.
You hit the nail on the head. They don't see it, and that's a problem. And of course, you can get into the science. You can say, well, stable isotope testing along bones of every single human remains over many decades on all continents proves categorically that for at least 350,000 years, we have eaten over 80% of our diet is the meat and the flesh and fat of animals. That's proven. That's fact. Nailed on. And then when you look at what we're eating now and what they're saying is unhealthy, what's been the result? Everyone's fatter, sicker, there's more diabetes, and the consumption of red meat and saturated fat has gone down. I mean, it's just a no-brainer. Yes, it could be seed oils. Yes, it could be refined carbohydrates. It could be a combination of both. It could be environmental, but it certainly ain't red meat and saturated fat because that's gone down. I mean, it's just a fact.
Yeah, but think how bad that it would be if that had gone up as well.
Well, that would be used, wouldn't it?
That's what they say. That's what they'll say. It's crazy. Yeah,
it is. So that is my story in a nutshell. I think that was half an hour. Sorry.
No, that's fantastic. That's what I want to hear. I think that's great. So I'd like to hear a bit about this phlebotomy thing. I mean, how many illusions are created by the ridiculous levels that they set? That are basically based on your average pizza eater, right? So nobody knows what they're supposed to be when we're on our proper human diet. So, what are your sort of worst comments that you see when doctors sort of basically the whole cholesterol thing set up as a contra statins, right? And you must be seeing these blood results in a completely different light. I'd love to hear about that.
Yeah, well, let's go to basics. Firstly, you've got ranges, which are normative values, right? So this is, let's say, for example, your high sensitive CRP, which is a protein released in relation to inflammation in your body. And they might say that the range is 0 to 5. Well, where did they get that? Is that optimal? But all bloods will follow this. Did they get millions of athletic, fit bucks in, and take their blood and say, right, this is what an optimal, physically active, wonderful human being, this is the levels they should all have? No. 88% of those bloods, and we're talking millions of data points, are taken from people that are sick in some way. They get the data from people that are in hospital. They get the data from people that are ill. They don't get fit, athletic people in and say, right, this is what optimal health looks like. This is what normative health looks like. This is what normal health looks like. Right, walk out in the high street, count 100 people and tell me how many do you go, wow, I bet they could run a mile in about 4 minutes. None. There's none. There's none out there, right? So, well, there is, like the carnivores, basically. But so we've got the ranges of rubbish. That's the first thing for optimal health. They're a guide, and they're okay as a guide, but they're not a great guide, especially when you're sort of biohacking. Secondly, they're also based on, like you say, on pizza eaters. So if someone eats slightly more protein, well, their blood urea nitrogen will read slightly higher because urea and nitrogen are byproducts of metabolism of protein. So if you're above the norm, it's going to be slightly higher. Doesn't mean it's wrong. And also, if you go on to sort of nursing websites, this is known. It's not even controversial. They'll say, because you can do this, you can look up phlebotomy, you can look up what nurses do, and there's plenty of nurses out there that tell you all about bloods. The first thing you ask that person is, do you eat a little bit more protein than most people? Ah, right, that explains it. You do. Okay, so that sort of explains it, especially in conjunction with like the GFR, the filtration rate of the kidney. You can get a reading from that. Now, that will show the kidney's working okay. But the problem there is the GFR has a little e in front of it. That's estimated. And do you know what it's based on? It's based on your blood urea nitrogen and your creatinine. And creatinine is a waste product of protein metabolism. So sometimes the GFR, and I've got proof of all this, by the way, it says, oh, your kidneys aren't functioning as well as we'd like. everybody that's ever been told that, who then does what's called a cystatin C test, and I'm talking to everybody, and I've got, I'm going to open the talk that we're doing at the end of March on this case study because it's a great example. I actually had a person that was told, right, we're going to start looking for a kidney replacement. We've got to do something. Your kidneys are absolutely shot to pieces. When they did the cystatin C, their reading went from less than 40 to 118. Because what they were doing was they basing it all on a calculation because the person had a lot of protein and it absolutely skewed the numbers. Right. Okay, that's a 1. That's an N equals 1. But I've got more than 1. And that is just an example of how crazy it is to just look at the numbers and not the person. And I've had people say that back to me because I drum it into people that do send lots of blood to me and have like a 6-monthly thing. Remember where you are with your health. I'm not saying to ignore anything. I never do that because I have to toe the line, but I also put it in context and say, right, okay, you've lost a lot of weight, your blood pressure is down, your fasting insulin's down, your fasting glucose is down. You've never felt better, you're sleeping better. Everyone's saying you look 20 years younger. Are you going to worry about your LDL cholesterol? Or use that as an example, because we look at the context there. And there's people up there that are still scared to say, well, it isn't an issue. But there is no proof that it is an issue. That's the first thing. 75% of people who have heart attacks have normal or low LDL cholesterol. And it isn't even cholesterol. It's low-density lipoprotein they're talking about. The cholesterol inside LDL is the same as the cholesterol inside HDL. And it's also the same particle that's going through veins as well as arteries. But you don't get plaques in veins, but you do in arteries. So there's loads of things about the bloods that make my blood boil because it needs to be addressed. It does need to be talked about. The HbA, I don't want to give all the talk away, but I've got plenty of this, so I won't be giving too much away. The HbA1c in the diabetic world. So I'll have someone come to me and say, look, I've got a continual glucose monitor and my average blood glucose is great. And when I did my last fasting insulin and fasting blood glucose and my C-peptide, which is a protein that cleaves off when insulin is made, so it's a good proxy marker. That's great. But my HbA1c is high. Again, we're going back to the calculation thing, which is a big issue because what they're doing is assuming that your red blood cells last, depending on the labs, 90 days or 120 days between that. Well, if we can prove that your red blood cells last longer than that, then it knocks that calculation out. And there is a way of proving it. There's 2 ways of talking about it. One is if someone is hemolytic anemic, we have to ignore their HbA1c because their red blood cells die sooner than they should. All right, so they don't get glycated. So somebody could say, oh, look at my HbA1c, it's fantastic, and still be diabetic because of the real readings, the continual blood glucose, the fasting insulin, the C-peptide is showing that this person is diabetic. So you ignore it. Well, let's flip it. What if your red blood cells last longer? Well, it's going to give you an artificially high reading. And don't forget, we've got all the other data about their actual blood on a daily basis, and the objective reality of that person's life is proving that there isn't a high average blood glucose. It's proving it. Can't stress that enough. But anyway, they're still worried about the HbA1c. So anyone listening to this with my mind goes, well, you should really sort of ignore that because all the actual measurements from the blood every single day are proving there's no problem. Right. But they don't. So they look at this thing and, oh, but it's flagged, going back to normative values. Well, you can do what's called a reticulocyte count, which is the bone marrow's release of immature red blood cells. And you can actually say, oh, yeah, you are producing less red blood cells because they're living longer. You can actually do that because that's what you do when you're looking at hemolytic anemia. Oh, yours are dying off because it's a really high number. There's obviously a lot of production here. So that maybe was a bit nuanced, but then you can get into really fantastic studies. Like I've got one that I'm going to talk about, another one where we talk about LDL, which is oxidized. And I am going to leave this as a spoiler. And what this person did to reduce LDL oxidation was incredible, but simple and easily understood. And we did it. which is great. I mean, he'll take all the credit because it was his sort of suggestion, because it's his blood and his body. He wanted to try something. And I went, yes, I actually know the researcher you're talking about. I know what you're saying. And I totally 100% agree that that could work. There was also another marker in that particular case where in the mainstream, they say that, again, I'm not going to give too much away. I want people to come and see. This is a real risk factor for cardiac disease. This is really a really bad risk factor. I said, you do realize there's another reason why that is elevated. It's because the body produces it to degrade oxidized LDL. That's not even controversial. That's in all the literature. So maybe if you open your mind up and do a little bit of joined up thinking, you've got oxidized LDL from your 30 years as a vegan, and your body's gone, right, now you're eating the right way. We're going to tackle this. We're going to produce this, and we're going to degrade that problem that you've got. And that's exactly what happened. And you can do that with bloods. So you get some proof of what you're saying. Absolute proof. Sorry, Phil. I mean, I've gone into something that's quite, passionate for me, because I see it all the time. I see it all the time with thyroid. And because you can track antibodies going down because of this way of eating. So that's improved. And you can actually say, right, let's look at you as a person. Let's look at your liver enzymes, so someone that trains hard, their ALT goes up a little bit. Well, that's known. If you do intense exercise, that might go up. So there's a little bit of knowledge will really help people in this way of eating to not be so scared. I'm not saying ignore the healthcare professional. If you've got a condition that you need medications for, I'm not saying you need to stop those or anything like that that's deemed as dangerous. I'm saying get yourself some knowledge so you know what's going on. See, going back to my mum, there are things that I've found out since that would have helped her. So that was not me being dangerous. That's me stopping my mum dying. And I think that's the thing. I'm not obsessed with that, by the way. I don't talk about that sort of thing very much. But I now know that, for instance, if you've got, somebody looking after a parent, you have to find out what is their specialism, because they might not necessarily be a specialist in the area that your parent's got a problem with. But that's interesting to know. At least you've got that. And then you can say, right, okay, is there any way of getting somebody else attending that is more of a specialist? You can ask the questions, not be a pain in the ass, but just ask the questions. Why are you waking her up to give her a sleeping pill? That sort of thing, which is really endemic. I mean, when she was growing up, that happened a lot. And so there's the phlebotomy.
Yeah, it's nuts, isn't it? They definitely killed my dad in 2003. And if I'd have known then what I know now, I mean, I already knew a little bit of it, and I knew enough to know that there was something seriously wrong, but not enough to know exactly what to do now. And not to say that he would have been saved, but he had a perfectly operable brain tumor, and we have a very good friend in Jordan who he's known his father since the mid-50s, and he's a brain surgeon. He's a brilliant one, and he knew that he could sort it out. Except I thought, well, all right, the NHS will do it. I was very naive, and then there was nothing wrong with his heart when he went in, but a month later he died because they blew his heart up with ridiculous meds that he didn't need. And this kind of thing happens because we trust these people like gods. I mean, I didn't. I knew there was something wrong, but not enough to know exactly what to do about it. Just pull him out there and fly him to Jordan. If I could have had my time over again, I'd have done that straight away, because you got to know that, as you say, there are some great things in the medical system, operations, things like that, when you need them, trauma care and whatever, but the rest is a minefield of negotiating. And you mentioned something there, that how are you feeling? It's just not what people are asked. We have our intuition squashed down. So often bloods can go weird when you go carnivore. I say to people, unless you've got a lot of confidence, don't go get your bloods checked in the first 3 months of carnivore, because things can go weird and people will give you some fear mongering. Thyroid's one thing, isn't it? People with Hashimoto's, Graves, whatever, it can go crazy before it stabilizes again. But I say to them, how are you feeling? I feel fine though. Well, there you go. Use your intuition.
Yeah, I mean, the functional units of the thyroid can store 50 days worth of thyroid. All right. Well, they can only do that if they've got the nutrients. Well, imagine being on I don't believe in calories, but let's say calorie restricted diet that's low fat. Your thyroid can't produce a day's worth. So people, they end up on medications. Well, because they can't produce a day's worth because they haven't got a day's worth of nutrition to do it. So then they come to this way of eating, and the functional unit sucks it all up and loves it because it's meant to store 50 days, not one, because the human body is really resilient. There's nothing in the body that lasts a day apart from your energy from glucose, by the way. So, it's interesting that someone will say, well, everything's gone a bit skew-if. Yeah, well, it has, because your body is sucking up everything that it's been missing for 30 years and going, oh, thanks for that. I'm really pleased. I'd like to produce a lot more of this. Now, if you've got, and this is very layman's, by the way, but if you've got antibodies that have been attacking, the thyroid globulin or the TPO, who have been underactive because you haven't even got 50 days worth, suddenly you got 50 days worth, you're going to have slightly more antibodies at the beginning because there's more to attack. And then you start to heal the thyroid, therefore the antibodies will start to actually dissipate and degrade. And that I've seen that a few times, where the antibodies gone up a little bit, but the person's feelings and the weight gain and the temperature management is all improved. And then it started to drop once the body starts to repair. So that definitely happens. And I think that's too layman's for me. So that's why I want to write a book, which actually has all the references and a bit more data and a few case studies to say, look, this is the thing that happens. But again, you shouldn't ignore the medications. There's no way, you should just stop them. You've got to talk to the people that are prescribing and try and get them on board, because, that's the way ahead, I think, to actually educate upwards. Start from the ground up and say, look, I've done my research. This is it. This is what's happening. I've had good blood. I understand them. Can you help me get off the meds? Because I want to get off the meds. Now, a decent doctor is going to want that to happen and want that knowledge. And I think we do them a disservice. I think, more probably would be interested. Certainly the younger ones, in the first 5 years of their job, they'll probably be a bit more interested. Maybe if your doctor is, a year away from retirement, they might just blow you away and say, I'm not interested. But, to me, it's human nature to be inquisitive. And sadly, I think for some, it's been knocked out of them. And going back to my original story to go, I can remember I was too scared to question, and I just went along with what was being told to me in that diabetic meeting. But I think it takes a lot of confidence to say, maybe I've been wrong. That's it. And I think you'll find that in the healthcare profession. But where's their success stories? I don't see it. I just don't see it. I just see people getting worse, getting fatter, getting sicker, more thyroid problems, more mental health issues, more obesity, but being malnourished, which is another thing. Like I say, with my obesity hat on, it's something I say to people a lot. The reason you're overweight is because you're not eating enough of the right things and eating way too much of the wrong things, and your body's just malnourished. They do find that funny. And, I remember a gentleman who was very big. Look, I'm malnourished, am I? Look at this, and patting his belly. I said, yeah, you're malnourished. Look, grabbing his bicep and saying, you ain't got any muscle, mate. So that's me being very, very simplistic. But that's the end result, is that people are not eating the right things. And I don't even blame them. I think they're being misinformed. But at some point, you have got to open your mind and your eyes and your ears to what's going on and think, well, we're all doing this stuff that we're being told to do, and it's rubbish. The results are terrible. If you're a Premier League manager and after 20 games, every single tactic you've used, you've lost 20 games in a row, at some point you've got to go, maybe I'm not a very good manager. Maybe my tactics are wrong. I've got to take something new on board, So the healthcare system has got to start looking around and saying, this is rubbish. Look at the results.
They have it drilled into them, don't they? The diet doesn't work, this kind of thing, because they see, with my experience with rheumatologists like 13 years ago or whatever, and they say diet doesn't work because they saw somebody give up bread for a week or something and they weren't completely cured, and so obviously it doesn't work. But they get sometimes very angry if you go back and say that you fixed something. You know, my rheumatologist absolutely freaked at me and started shouting, and that was the last time I ever saw him. You know, just for going back to show how well I was doing. He didn't like that at all.
Mm.
And then my mum's oncologist, when we reversed the breast cancer, and him sort of turning around shocked and going, "How did you do that?" And it was the first natural reversal of breast cancer that he'd ever seen, and he was an oncologist.
Mm.
And it just makes you think, what's going on in, well, we know exactly what's going on in there, but people don't realize that quacks like us actually see these things reversed.
Yeah, I know. And I'm being a bit overgenerous, but it is because they're in a bubble where they exactly what you just see. You know, oh, I did give up bread for a week and it didn't do anything. So they genuinely believe it. I don't think there's any nastiness in it. I don't think there's any. I just can't find the words to defend them really, but I'm trying to be magnanimous. But to me, I think it just needs a big shake up. And there's too many stories, but even people online, influencers, dietitians and stuff like that. One springs to mind, you know, new to the job. You've got to stop the carnivore diet. Yes, it's got some pros, and it's, you know, this long list of pros. Oh, you know, no fiber, and you get this much better GI tract. But I'm not saying fiber's bad. I'm thinking, well, you just did. You literally just did, and they can't even see it. So our heart's in the right place. But it's you know, the Dunning-Kruger thing, where you've got a little bit of knowledge, and because you've got that little bit of knowledge, you don't see how incompetent you are, and you get that fake sort of confidence at the beginning. I mean, for those that don't know that, the Dunning-Kruger is a very interesting thing where you get a little bit of knowledge and your confidence level is up here, and you annoy everyone and you prattle on like you think you know. Maybe that's what people think from me at the moment. But the longer you do it, the more you realize, this is me actually, the more you realize you don't know. The more you learn, the more you become not unsure, but you begin to say, right, yeah, I need to think about this a bit more. I can't be that confident. And that's the Dunning-Kruger thing at the beginning. And sadly, some people, when they get that sort of extra knowledge, stick to their original knowledge and their original attitudes. And they exhibit, you know, extraordinary amounts of confidence and overcompensate by getting, you'll see it online, being nasty, calling you names, you know, hitting the man rather than the data, smearing you.
Yeah.
And it's incredible because I feel, I mean, that particular video I was just talking about, she said, I'm expecting a ton of hate comments. So I actually went to look at the comments, and virtually every comment from a carnivore was polite, generous.
Yeah, I know the one you're talking about that Bart did recently with the
oh, did he? All right. Okay, yeah. And it's just like, you've made the assumption you get hate, but you're not. You can get people saying you're a little bit misinformed. So I commented and said, look, here's 3 things you don't know. Come on my channel and we'll talk about it. Because it's not about hatred. It's about trying to educate people. And
yeah, it's funny. And they get so aggressive, like enjoy your heart attack and cancer and all that. And I say, well, look, I was crippled with psoriatic arthritis. I couldn't move. And I had all sorts of other issues. And they've all gone away. You know, what is it exactly that's going to kill me suddenly? Yes. And I say, why? All the vegans, they seem to be obsessed with lifespan. Well, the longest lifespan, obviously, we know that we won't go into the bollocks of the blue zones, right? That's all nonsense. But even what about health span? There's worse things than death, I tell you, and that is a full-blown rheumatoid arthritis flare where you can't even move and you're in screaming agony even still on the sofa. That's worse than death. What am I going to do? Go back to plant-based so I can live 100 years like that instead of 80 years like, you know, running around. It's amazing that just, you know, what are you going to do? Like Sean Baker said once, didn't he? He said, you know, even if I die from a rock to the head at 106, the vegans will still blame the meat.
Yes. Yeah. And I think there's the thing about, well, actually, I mean, if you do look at lifespan, Hong Kong has the longest living people per capita, and they have the highest consumption in the world of red meat. But that's an inconvenient truth. And also, you talk about the blue zones. Only yesterday, I interviewed someone from Okinawa, and they were telling me that for every person, there are 5 pigs on this, and they must eat a lot of pork. You know, they must. And the blue zones is a pile of rubbish as well. And There is also that joke about, a vegan lived to 70, buried at 90. Because you spend 20 years absolutely in terrible, terrible health. And you're right. I mean, I would rather live a healthy, vital life to 80 than a miserable existence till I'm 100. I mean, it's ridiculous to look at it like that. But yeah, health span is very important. But I do think lifespan, I do think this way of eating will extend that as well. Personally, Phil, I think fit and healthy for longer than most people.
Definitely. I would be amazed if I would still be alive now if I'd carried on with my sort of pizza, Haagen-Dazs, and then trying to have one healthy rice and dal and veg meal a day. I'd have
Well, I think
died just from PPI overload, probably trying to get rid of the gut issues, which doesn't work, obviously.
Well, yeah, I mean, literally, I think if I'd have not found low carb, I'd now be dead. Simple as that. Because I was going that way. I was sicker, fatter. Everything was going south. Yeah, I do think I would have been dead by now, to be honest. And it's incredible that people give you stick for realizing what you can do to help yourself and help other people. And I'm really proud of helping so many other people. I mean, I've got a coaching call in a few minutes, and the guy's going to get better. It means that simple. It is that simple, isn't it? I know. I never go into a call and think, oh, this is a tough one. I don't think I can help. And I get lovely emails, and lovely comments and stuff like that. And it's, a lot of them are very tentative. Do you think you can help me? And I'm like, yes.
Are you a human being? Yes. Oh, I can help you.
yeah.
That's it. Yeah.
Not saying you can get someone that can't walk to walk. Or they've lost their hair and they're going to get hair back. But sorry, Phil.
No, but I proved.
but it's going to be better. Whatever you do, you're going to give their body an environment that's going to make them feel better, less pain, less fatigue, less anxiety. It just works. It just because we're feeding the body the right thing, the thing that we should be feeding it. And to me, that's just so obviously going to work. And it does. That's the thing. And the only time it doesn't really work for people is when they can't do it. Peer pressure is a huge one, which I talked about earlier, so I understand that. Addiction, which is a different kettle of fish, where we have to talk about, we've got to talk about mental health. We've got to talk about why you're doing the things that you're doing, your behavior, which isn't fixed by diet at first, because there are, situational things that happen that trigger you to want to eat an ice cream or something. So you have to get into the whole body and the whole mind. But I'm always confident that even with, because I will steer people, I will steer people to the right coach if they need that, if they need addictive work on their addiction. And I will say, someone like Pim Jansen or someone like that. Sorry if I've missed anyone out, but there are plenty of people that can deal with that. And once you get rid of that addiction, you can then start eating this way and not trip yourself up. So, but there's influencers out there that still sort of say, "Oh, have a cheat meal." I don't call it a cheat meal. I call it a family meal. Well, I don't call it a cheat meal. I call it a sabotage meal. So, it depends how you look at it. And again, I'm not anti-family. If your family will not be your family because you're not eating a potato,
spot on. Yeah,
you need a new family. Family to me is they support you in what you want to do, especially if it's making things better. So I'm glad I made you laugh. It's taken me an hour. I've been trying to.
No, you have. That's beautifully put with the potato. Yeah, I'm stealing that one. But you're spot on. I think to keep people understanding this, they just need the confidence. Once you got the confidence, because I remember even from like 2012 when I first discovered sort of paleo and keto, and then sliding into sort of almost carnivore, and then going completely carnivore in 2015. And it took me ages to get that total confidence that yes, it's all right to throw the veg out if you want, throw the whole damn lot out, and you'll be fine. And if people just had that confidence, then they can make their own choices or whatever. But confidence, as well as peer pressure and stuff, takes it away. But the peer pressure erodes the confidence, doesn't it? And you know, the more that people like us go and shout about it, I think it'll get through, because we are pretty chilled. We don't argue. We don't start screaming in caps lock, you know, that we're going to come and kill you for feeding your children an avocado or something. It's crazy.
That's crazy. Yes.
Yeah.
So we're up on time. I just want to say though,
yeah,
you mentioned throwing out the fruit and veg. People talk about the environment. Food waste, 87% of food waste is vegetable matter. So a lot is getting thrown out, and that's pretty bad. And maybe I can come back and talk about the environment a bit more. But
definitely, yeah, we'll do it again. But yeah, the compost drawer in the fridge, it always ends up in the bin, doesn't it? It's yeah. So Stephen, thank you so much. Now I'm going to put all your links underneath. So, you know, to chat to Stephen, see him talking, just you know, come to our War on Health thing, Easter 2024. There'll be links underneath. And hear more about that. I want to hear more about the bloods, because there's so many cons going on in there. And Stephen, thank you so much. And quickly, where can people find you, even though the links will be down there?
On the web, the ukcarnivore.com. And I'm also on Instagram, the UK Carnivore. YouTube, it's too late to change the name. So that is Stephen Thomas, BSc Honours. But there you go. You can find me on YouTube as well. I'm on X and also on TikTok, but you'll find me. I'm easy to find.
Cool. Thanks, mate. And I'll see you on some calls soon. I'll see you in person at Easter.
Son of a lighthouse keeper,